we're gonna begin with the book of Thessalonians. So you see how this translation says Paul, right? Paulus, which was his Greek name, for he was a Roman citizen, and a Hebrew, so he had the name Shaul as a Hebrew. So the translations that try to take it to the roots, to the Hebrew roots, they put the name Shaul instead of Paulus, although it seems both were his names. For Shaul means the desired one, and Paul means small one, little one. So these are two aspects that represent the apostle Paul, for he was a representation of the desired of nations. But in order for that not to fill him with pride, he was given another name that means little one. So that will keep him with his feet on the ground. And we see that that is something that he struggles with throughout his letters, which is, I believe, interesting to see in his personality as it shows in his writings. Also, it refers to how the last, right, the second manifestation of Yahweh as the desired of the nations, as it appears also in Malachi 3, the third that he would appear on the first verse of Malachi 3, the third one mentioned, the desired of nations. He who was asked, well, who was actually desired because, um, well, I'm already talking about it, but let me just show it with the verse. Malachi 3:3 is a verse that we've spoken about a lot, so I'll just be quick. 3:1. So, behold, I send my messenger, that is Yahuhanan the Immerser, right? John the Baptist, and he will prepare the way before me. So he prepared the way before Mashiach, the first manifestation of Yahweh. And Yahweh, the sovereign in this case, I said Yahweh because normally they change Yahweh for Lord, but in this case, as we can see in the Hebrew, we see that it says Ha'adon right here. So the sovereign whom you seek, that is the Messiah, the Savior, the salvation that everyone seeks, will suddenly come to his temple. Yahushua said, destroy this temple and I will raise it up in 3 days. So this first part refers to John the Baptist who prepared the way. The second part refers to the coming of the first manifestation of Yahweh on this earth, Yahushua, the sovereign whom you seek, for we seek salvation, forgiveness of sins through his temple, being his body, which he gave on the cross for our sins. And then the third part, even the messenger or the malach, as we see right here, the malach of the covenant, the messenger of the covenant, that is Michael, according to Daniel 12:1, Daniel 9, Daniel 8, and well, many other chapters or verses in the book of Daniel, where we see that the malach, the messenger, is the prince of the covenant, who is Michael. So that is the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth through the last, who happens to be the messenger of Mashiach, as Mashiach says it on the book of Revelation 22, that he will send his messenger, his malach, to give testimony. So he is the witness, for he will give testimony to the congregations. And then it says, even the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming. So this in whom you delight has to do also with the desired of nations here in Haggai. And I will shake, and I will just see the context. For thus says Yahweh of hosts, once more, it is a little while. I will shake heaven and earth. That is something prophesied several times in scriptures, both in the new and the old covenant, meaning since it is also in the new, that it is something that has to happen still, which is what will happen in the end times, for he already shook the heavens and the earth when he brought the flood. Yahushua said that the coming of the Son of Man, the second manifestation, the last, would be like the days of Noah when the flood happened. So now there will be something similar in which the whole earth will be destroyed, but this time it won't be through water, for he already promised that he wouldn't do it through water by making the covenant with Noah through the rainbow. This time he will do it through fire. So once more, it is a little while, I will shake heaven and earth, the sea and dry land. And I will shake all nations, and they shall come to the desire of all nations, to the desire of all nations. And I will fill his temple. And I will fill this temple with honor, right? Or this house, which is the same. Says Yahweh of hosts, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, says Yahweh of hosts. If we see more about this chapter, we can see, well, this desire of all nations can be represented in a couple ways or interpreted in a couple ways. But one of those ways is meaning what the last will bring. It is what all nations desire, which is shalom. And we see in Yirmiyahu, the prophet, that the last, the prophet, like Moshe promised in Deuteronomy 18, is the one who will bring shalom. That's why Yahushua said, do not think that I came to bring peace, for I came to bring a sword and a fire, right? So the last is the one who brings peace, which is what the nations desire. And this desirable nations is also represented by Zerubbabel, who represents the last, who is mentioned in this book of Haggai, whose name means who was born in confusion. And he was the son of Shealtiel, name which means he whom we asked from the Father, or he who was asked from the Father, meaning those, meaning the one for whom people prayed to the Father, which also refers to the one who would bring shalom. So all of that, just because I wanted to show how this translation uses the name Shaul, desire, but this other translation uses Paul, two names that refer to the same person but have different meanings, which refer to the way in which the world will see the last as a little person, meaning as a little in importance, right? As somebody who is not, well, whatever they will say, right? Smart, successful, whatever it is that this world worships, they will not see that in the one who is coming, for he comes as a thief in the night, right? But in reality, he is the desired of nations, just like the name Shaul. So spiritually, the name Shaul fits in the physical or the earthly realm, or at least in the eyes of society, he will be little in importance, like the name Paul refers to. So then comes Silas and Timotheus, which is he who honors the mighty one. The meaning of the name. So since I'm already mentioning, Silvanus or Silas means woody, right? Wood. Remember that in Hebrew, the word for wood is the same word for tree. And that is the same word that was used in Deuteronomy when prophesying about the fact that Mashiach would be killed on a cross. But in the scriptures in Hebrew, it says on a tree, on etz, on wood. So now that we're seeing those three names here, and in fact, we have also Thessalonians, so let's just check that one real quick. Meaning of the name, this is an interesting name. They write victory and falsity, or triumph, right? Well, I'll leave victory because it is the name of a false mighty one, or the name of a god. And we see that false right here, so it is a false Elohim. And that's interesting that the book of Thessalonians is called that, even though we was talking to some people that lived in that place, but the meaning of the name is important because as we will read through these two books or letters to the Thessalonians, we see that it mainly refers to how the enemy will triumph through the lie that he will present to the world, which is the false Messiah. Right? And obviously triumph for a while in this reality, in the hearts of people, not in the whole of reality, for everything is prophesied. So sadly, since people have rejected the Messiah, the truth, they will accept the false Messiah, the lie. So the false Messiah will triumph over the hearts of those who have rejected the truth. That is pretty much the main idea that we'll see through these books, mainly the second letter, but I'll begin already. In these three names, we could see he who is the desired of nations on wood gave honor to Yahweh, right? On a tree gave honor to the mighty one. And in that case, he triumphed over falsehood, right? He was able to triumph through his sacrifice over falsehood. But I'll read now. Shaul and Silas and Timotheus to the assembly of the Thessalonians in Elohim, the Father and the Sovereign, Yahushua HaMashiach, favor to you and shalom from Elohim, our Father and Sovereign, Yahushua HaMashiach. Also important to see three names here, for in a way, these three names could be connected to the three people that Yahweh would send. Timotheus representing Eliyahu, Silas because of the wood connection with the tree or cross with Mashiach, and Shaul, the desired of nations, like I already said the last. So the three messengers to the assembly, to the congregation, which has been in the middle of the apostasy, right, through false doctrines. In Elohim, the Father and the Sovereign, Yahushua HaMashiach, favor to you and shalom from Elohim, our Father and the Sovereign, Yahushua HaMashiach. We give thanks to Elohim always for you all, making mention of you in our prayers, remembering without ceasing your work on the belief and the labor of love and the endurance of the expectation of our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach in the presence of our Elohim and Father. So, right first, he's saying hi to everybody. Obviously, talking about how much he gives thanks to Yahweh, for they have accepted in Thessalonians, they have accepted the Messiah. So he mentions them in his prayers. Then it says, remembering without ceasing your work on the belief, right? This verse says, remembering without ceasing your work of faith, labor of love and patience. Your work of the belief, of the emunah, right, in Messiah, which is very important, not only to have belief, but also to have works. We need to show through our example that we actually believe what we are saying. Because if we don't believe, I mean, if we claim to believe in the commandments as the true way of living, if we don't follow the commandments, then we are lying to ourselves. Remembering without ceasing your work of the belief and the labor of love, right? Because we must do everything in love, out of love, not of, well, whatever, like honor from men or money or things that people labor for in this reality. We should labor, as it says here, the labor of love, labor for the Almighty and therefore our brethren, and do everything through love, because of love, for we must love our neighbor as ourselves. So that should be enough to do everything that we do for others out of love. And the endurance of the expectation. And well, also something important about love is that, as Paul also teaches in another letter, no matter what we do, if we do it without love, like no matter what we do that may seem, it may work to become more spiritual or to please the Almighty or to help others, if we do any of those things without actual love for Yahweh and our neighbor, then it'll be worth nothing. It won't help us at all in the next reality, in the next life, in the spiritual, because we would be receiving, first of all, we will be doing it for a different reason, and therefore we would be receiving the reward for it in this reality and through things that are temporal, like the society, being accepted by it, for instance, which is what many people desire. Remembering without ceasing your work of the belief and the labor of love and the endurance, right? The perseverance of the expectation in our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach in the presence of our Elohim and Father. Knowing, brothers beloved by Elohim, that you were chosen. Knowing that you were chosen. Here it is speaking to the Thessalonians. Obviously, it comes all the way to us, thankfully. And when it comes to those who are listening at the moment, well, even to all of us, but nowadays, as we know, there will be 144,000 who won't have to go through death. So they will be chosen for that. So there is a selection that will happen in the end times. But beyond that, there was a selection that Yahweh made from the beginning of time, in which he decided, because he knew through the free will of every person, he knew what their choices would be, and will be, and therefore he chose every person to whom he would reveal who the true Messiah is. Because through the revelation of the Messiah, those who receive it would be able to get to know the true Father and Creator Almighty, and therefore receive salvation or justification, depending on the time in which they would receive their revelation. Knowing, brothers beloved by Elohim, that you were chosen. So the fact that we know the Messiah, the fact that we have accepted him as our Savior, as sovereign, is enough to know that we have been chosen in the general respect of that word. Then it comes on a deeper level to what will happen in our time through the seal of the chosen few who won't have to experience death. Because our good news did not come to you in word only. Because our good news did not come to you in word only, but also in power and in the set apart ruach and in entire confirmation, as you know what kind of man we were among you for your sake. So he's talking about how when they were around, they did not appear only given words of encouragement or even knowledge and wisdom, but also doing works of power through the Ruach of Yahweh, confirming that what they were teaching is true. Because our good news did not come to you in word only, but also in power and in the set apart Ruach and in entire confirmation, as you know what kind of man we were among you for your sake. And you became imitators of us and of the sovereign, having received the word in much pressure with joy of the set apart Ruach. So, and you became imitators of us and of the sovereign, right? We should not imitate the world of those, or those who are of the world. We should imitate Mashiach, who is the word, right? So we should imitate the Messiah, his works, and those who imitate him, because Yahushua is the role model. He is the one that we should be like in every way. And every person will have his own or her own well, special characteristics, personality, their own uniqueness, but through imitating the actions of Mashiach, the way the Messiah acts, everybody will come to perfection, to what the Almighty expected from each and every person. Obviously, that perfection will come mainly in the transformation, but till that time, we should all work for it and imitate the Messiah. And you became imitators of us and of the sovereign, having received the word in much pressure with joy of the set apart Ruach, so that you became an example to all who believe in Macedonia and Achaia. So that you became an example to all who believe, right? And even to us in our time, in which there's a lot of pressure in every way from the world, from society, from friends and family members, yet we receive it with joy of the set apart Ruach, a joy that they many times don't understand. And it's interesting that even seeing that shalom that Yahweh has given us and seeing the joy within us, they still do not want to know or understand or hear the word. So that you became an example to all who believe in Macedonia and Achaia. Achaia means trouble. Macedonia, extended land. Like I said, the word has gone to the world, a world which is in much pressure right now in many ways because of, well, everything, pretty much, the economy, how society is acting, homosexuality, what they accept as good and what they claim is evil, the false doctrines in different congregations or in all churches, everything. And not to mention what has happened the last couple of years. So much pressure has gone to the whole world. And then he says, so that you became an example to all who believe in Macedonia and Achaia. Like I said, not only an example to those in that time, in those places, geographically speaking, but also in time, all the way to us in the end times, in which there's a lot of trouble, meaning of the word Achaia. And Macedonia, as we saw, means extended land. So the word, the good news, extended throughout the whole land, a land which is in a lot of trouble. Reason why people are under much pressure, yet we are filled with the joy of the Ruach HaKodesh. So, once again, so that you became an example to all who believe in the extended land of trouble. For from you, the word of the sovereign has sounded forth, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, not only in the extended land of the world, who is in trouble, which is in trouble, but also in every place your belief toward Elohim has gone out, so that it is unnecessary for us to say whatever. So the word had gone to a lot of places through those of Thessalonians. So they were being a great example. Then it says, for they themselves report what kind of reception we had with you and how you turned to Elohim from idols to serve the living and true Elohim. Once again, for they themselves report what kind of reception we had with you and how you turned to Yahweh from idols. They left the idols they were worshiping, as nowadays most people worship idols, even if they are not made of stone or clay or metals. There are many ways in which people worship idols nowadays, even those who claim to be believers in the scriptures, believers in the Almighty, those who go to church, those who call themselves Christians, etc. And how you turn to Yahweh from idols to serve the living and true Elohim, the true mighty one who lives, and to wait for his son from the heavens, and to wait for his son from the heavens. There are a couple things or ways in which we could interpret this, because as I already said earlier, Mashiach, the son, in Revelation 22 says that he's sending his messenger, Mikael, who is the Malach, who is sent from the heavens. So just like Mashiach came from the heavens, but he was born, the last comes from the heavens, but he would be born. That was a detail that people didn't understand, because they were expecting the Messiah. Some of them were expecting the Messiah to come from heaven. So since they knew that he was born, that Mashiach was born through Miriam, they rejected him, not understanding that there was a soul that came from heaven to enter that body that came out of Miriam. So the same happens with the last. In that sense, this would be fulfilled, because remember that the messenger represents he who sent him in every way. That's why Mashiach represented Yahweh in every way. And he told Philip that if he had seen him, he had seen the Father. So in the same way, when the last comes, he who has seen the last has seen the first. He who has seen the last has seen the Son. So the Son, in a way, comes through his messenger, the last, the witness like Moshe. And that is what people should be waiting for, to understand the times and many other things. But there is another interpretation of this verse, which is more literal, and it would refer to Mashiach, Yahushua, the one who went up in Acts, coming down again. But after everything has happened, after the fulfillment of pretty much, well, most of the book of Revelation, right? After the two witnesses and after the last 7 plagues, when the two witnesses resurrect, the last becomes one with the first, as Ezekiel 37 prophesies, and also Zechariah 14:9. So once they become one, they will come to fight in the war of Harmegiddo. And that is when he would come from heaven, in a more literal sense. But that would be a little bit late for people to wait until then, right? People should be waiting for the manifestation of the two witnesses in order to understand how to fulfill what's left and be chosen and enter the eternal reality, and then come down with the Son himself. So since the chosen few would be coming with the Messiah in Revelation 19, the fact that it says, and to wait for his Son from the heavens, that kind of means that it is referring either to the coming of the last, or the harvest, when the chosen few will be taken up. So they would be waiting for that moment when they will be going up to the heavens and meet with the Messiah there. For Messiah himself said to the disciples, the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me. So he wouldn't be coming to the world, for he now will remain in the heavens at the right hand of the Father. It is the last who comes to the world and has a connection to the world afterwards, in order for the first and the last to become one, and therefore heavens and earth become one. And to wait for his Son from the heavens, whom he raised from the dead, Yahushua, who is delivering us from the wrath to come. That is beautiful, because although there has been different types of wrath that have manifested in the past from the Father, this wrath to come refers mainly to the end times, to the plagues that will happen in the last 3.5 years, the wrath of Yahweh. For before those last 3.5 years, the first 3.5 years have to do with the wrath of the Lamb, the wrath of the Son, and then the wrath of the Father. 3.5, 7 years. The two witnesses come to prophesy during the time of the wrath of the Son. That's why they prophesy pretty much against the churches, the congregations that claim to believe in him, but reject him and the true doctrine that the two witnesses would preach. Then comes the 3.5 years of the wrath of the Father Creator, which will be against the nations and the world in general. So this pretty much confirms what I was just saying, how it mainly connects or fits the manifestation of the last and the harvest, through which the chosen will be saved or delivered from the wrath to come, for they will be taken to the set apart place, or the prepared place, I should say, the prepared place mentioned in Revelation 12, and they will be there for 1,260 days, 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years, while the wrath manifests on this earth. So, and to wait for his son from the heavens, whom he raised from the dead, Yahushua, who is delivering us from the wrath to come.